Hello and welcome to the show. If you are following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, thank you very much. If not, please click like and follow. And if you're watching us live on YouTube, do turn on the notifications. And if you do so, you'll hear me apologize for the very first time in my career, because at the start of the season, I said that Frank Lampard would have a disastrous season at Chelsea and Arteta was a mistake for Arsenal. I have got that completely right. Haven't I, Danny Mills?
Yeah. Sadly not, Roshan. It just goes to show that all us experts don't always know everything.
But to be fair to me, and I mean, let's be honest, Danny, the reason why I love working with you, and the reason why you love working with me, that's a lie, but the reason why I love working with you is because you're an honest person, you speak your mind, and that's what I believe in as a host as well. You don't be afraid of crossing the thin red line. You might get shot if you're wrong.
We all have opinions at the time,
yes.
And those opinions are, they're not just wild guesses. It's what we've considered, it's what you've thought about, it's what you've looked at, and you've then made a considered opinion from experience and knowledge and everything else. I thought Chelsea would always be okay because I thought their squad of players is very, very good. They only really lost Eden Hazard. There was always going to be a little bit of a gamble, but I always thought they had a squad good enough to make the top four. They've shown at times that they're still a work in progress in terms of they play better football, but they can't defend at times. That needs to be obviously addressed. They conceded far too many goals. Arsenal, even before lockdown, I was still a little bit undecided on Mikel Arteta. Everyone kept saying, "Oh, they're playing much better football." I'm like, well, are they really? Is it that much better than it was before? I'm not convinced that it is. So since lockdown, that they've played very, very well. They've now won a cup. They've got themselves into the Europa League for next season. I still think Mikel Arteta can only do so much with his side. I still think he needs 2 or 3 signings. There are now issues around Ozil. There are issues around Aubameyang. These big players, they need to get rid of Ozil, keep Aubameyang, and bring a couple in. That's not going to be easy. That's going to be difficult. But, let's be honest, in terms of league position, Arsenal, Mikel Arteta took over in 8th, and I believe they finished in 8th. So it wasn't like it was a dramatic improvement, was it? It's a little bit like Brighton, when people say, "Oh, Brighton are so much better this year," but their league position's the same. Newcastle, Steve Bruce has done as good as Rafa Benitez, but he's not held in anywhere near as great esteem as Rafa Benitez for some unknown reason. Football's about results.
Yep.
The way that you play comes secondary. There's no point
playing the same
football.
thing. You can say the same thing for the referee last night during the game, Anthony Taylor. So much was said. How do you defend the man with his performances? That red card, those 2 yellow cards for Kovacic.
The first one is a yellow card. You have to understand that. Then you're on a tightrope. You have to be very, very careful what sort of challenges you put in. You don't want to give the referee an excuse to send you off. The issue that I have, he made the decision very, very quickly. He didn't appear to consult with any of his assistants, whether that be the 2 linesmen or assistant referees, they're called, or the 4th official. Now, I understand and I know the rules that VAR is not allowed to look at it because it's a yellow card offence. But I think this is where it's wrong, and hugely wrong. VAR was brought in to eradicate big errors and eradicate wrong decisions for game-changing moments, penalties, goals, red cards. If you're giving a player a red card, even if it's for a second yellow card, surely you should be able to look at that on VAR to check. Because if you send a player off for a second booking and it's wrong, that is a game-changing moment. That could be in the first minute, it could be in the last minute. But that affects the whole outcome of the game. So this is where I don't quite understand. If you're going to send somebody off, the referee should have the ability to go and check the monitor, which they never do in this country. I don't know why. But at least speak to the 4th official and say, hang on a minute, I'm not quite sure about this, because this decision could affect the game. It's all right saying afterwards.
No, but it cost Chelsea the game.
Of course it does. It's all right saying afterwards, oh, it was a second yellow card. Maybe we made a mistake. It's too late for Chelsea. You know, you're talking about a cup final. VAR was supposed to be brought in to eradicate those wrong decisions for game-changing moments. And for the second yellow card, I think it has to be used.
So the question is, we've seen it for a good 9 months. I mean, with the lockdown, it's been longer, but okay, one or two mistakes, everyone can understand. But when there's a mistake nearly week in and week out with VAR, if you don't use VAR, you don't use the monitor, there has to be someone who just sits down and says, see, this is what has to be done if they bring it back next year. Actually, would you want it back next year? Would you want it back next year?
Well, I think it's here to stay. I don't think it's going to go. So let's not get any ideas that it's suddenly going to disappear. But I think what the Premier League, and I've said this several times, that I think the Premier League were a little bit arrogant in changing the way that VAR was done to UEFA, to FIFA, to the rest of the world. What we've seen in Champions League, what we've seen in World Cups. Not using the pitch side monitors was a really, really bad decision. You have to let the on-field referee make the decision and overturn his decision if he wants. He knows the speed of the game. He knows the situation and he knows everything about that game. He's there. He's in the moment. If somebody sat in an office watching the replay after replay takes 3 or 4 minutes, that can't be right. You know, and everyone says, oh, the referee can't go to the monitor, it takes too long. Well, VAR's taken way too long. You then have the issue that the VAR official doesn't want to not stitch up his mate, but overrule his mate a lot of the time and say, oh, you got that wrong. Because it's like, well, you got that wrong, I'm better than you. And it starts to cause a little bit of animosity in those sort of situations. The referees will come out, the head of referees, Mike Riley, will come out and say, look, we've got 98% of decisions right this season. Yeah, but 95 of those it's a throw in that way, it's a goal kick that way. You know, they're irrelevant decisions. The big game-changing moments, too many have still been wrong this season. Really poor decisions, and that's once it's been looked at by VAR.
Correct. That's the point. If technology can't get it right, then what's the point of it?
The thing is, it's not technology. It's the people looking at the technology. You know, how many times have we all look at games? So most pundits would have been looking at that yellow card yesterday. Most people that are involved in football are looking at that and going, "There's not a yellow card." Simple as that. You know, he's gone in. It's a little bit like the Bruno Fernandes penalty decision when they got the penalty. Anybody that looks in that knows football, and you don't have to have played the game to look at that and know that that's not a foul, looks at that and goes, no penalty.
Yep.
And so you start to think, well, what are they looking at? And this is why I think at the moment, there is no accountability for the VAR official. If the VAR official had to come out after the game and say, right, I made this decision on this basis. Now, you can't do that with referees at grounds because there's crowd issues and all those types of security things and everything else. But the VAR official is locked away in Stockley Park. You know, he's in his vault, he's in his safe, he's in his panic room, whatever you want to call it. He could quite easily come out afterwards and say, right, this is why we decided, or I decided that this was not a penalty, or this was a penalty, or this was handball. Why shouldn't they have to be accountable and do that? I don't understand, because there's no pressure, because they've seen dozens and dozens of replay. They've seen everything that we've seen in slow motion. So surely they should have to come out and justify their decision.
But do you think the officials, as in the hierarchy that look after the match officials, be it VAR, who's taking care of VAR, or the people on the pitch itself, they're worried for their safety? Because, I mean, football fans can be passionate. There might not be that line drawn when it comes to attacking an official when they're off the pitch or when they're not working in a shopping mall with your family.
Yeah, but you have to understand that, you know, most people are reasonable. If you get told the reasons why, right? So at the moment, so yesterday, no one agrees with the yellow card. If the referee, if the VAR, or if let's just say that was a straight red. So no, everyone agrees it wasn't a straight red. Then you suddenly come out and the VAR official said, "Look, this is the reason that I gave the red card." You go, "Okay, I don't agree with it, but I understand your point of view." That causes less animosity than anything else.
Yeah.
You know, offside is offside. Whether it's 1 millimeter or 10 millimeters, doesn't matter. It's offside. Goal line technology, apart from just the once, has been absolutely immaculate over the past, few seasons. And it's like as a player sometimes, you'd be berating the referee, you'd be right up in the referee's face like this, going,
like you,
going mad. Yeah. And then the referee said, look, this is the way I saw it, or I'm sorry, I didn't see it, or I didn't see it like that. And you still go,
yeah.
But you get it. And it takes away your argument. At the moment, because fans in the ground don't know, people on telly don't know, and we're all watching it going, why is he given that decision? No one knows. Yeah. And I think that's what I think, people that pay their money, that pay to go and watch football, that pay their subscriptions around the world, they deserve to be told why these decisions are or aren't being given.
And I think a lot of fans need to be told that when Chelsea were going to sign, and this is what he was called when he was at Dortmund, Christian Pulisic. Now in England, he's called differently. But when he was signed by Chelsea, I said, this guy's going to be a world-class star. Just give him some time to settle in, and then he'll really pop. Unfortunately, he got injured in the finals, but he's looking the real deal, isn't he?
Some players settle in immediately. It's like the Crest effect. Crest grows in 3 days, and all of a sudden it's like it's been there forever. Some players take a long, long time. And you have to remember, this is a young player that has come from a different league, a different language. He's used to certain ways of doing things, a different lifestyle, and he's been thrown into the spotlight with new colleagues, and it takes time. Anybody that's ever moved out of town or moved jobs and moved towns and moved their family and moved everything else, you don't settle overnight. By the time you found a house and rented for a bit, or then you found schools for the children, or the wife, or the whoever girlfriend is settled, or whoever it might be, all of these things take time. And yes, sometimes you get that initial spike where it's about adrenaline and it's a rush and it's all exciting and everything, and then reality kicks in, and you can have a little bit of a dip in form, and sometimes that can last a month, sometimes it can last 6 months.
Yeah.
Until you get used to your new surroundings and dealing with different players, dealing with a different setup, maybe more professional, maybe a higher standard. All these things take time. Thierry Henry was not a great success when he first came to Arsenal.
Yep.
Nicolas Anelka was not a great success, when he first came in. There are a lot of players that have come from abroad, especially, that have not hit the ground running, and it's taken them a little bit of time to get going. And, I think Pulisic is one of those.
And how long would it take for him to prove to you that he is the ideal replacement for Eden Hazard?
We just need to, we've seen it for 10 or so games, towards the end of, we've seen it after lockdown. We saw it a little bit before, so probably see 20 games. He needs to do it for another season. It's going to be a huge shame. I know there's no real chance that Chelsea are going to get through in their Champions League game against Bayern Munich, but you never know. If they get an early goal, nerves set in, those type of things, it'll be a shame if it looks like he will be missing from that. But if he has another good season next year, up until Christmas time, then you start to say, okay, now he's the real deal. Now he's a proper Premier League player. Because we've seen it all before, especially with young players.
But can he
Tammy Abraham had a great start to the season and then tailed off a little bit. It happens time. But could he be? He could be as good as Eden Hazard. He's got the pace, he's got the ability, he's got the skills, he's got the goals. He's now just got to do it week in, week out.
Well, Hudson-Odoi was doing it week in, week out. Bayern Munich were interested in him. He decided to stay at Chelsea. And he's somewhat of the forgotten man. He came on later on in that final against Arsenal in the FA Cup. But what has happened to him? Would you stay or would you leave if you were him come next season?
Well, I think he's got a big choice to make, hasn't he? Because you've now got Pulisic. You've got Ziyech coming in. Yep. That's going to play in a very, very similar position. You've got Barkley, you've got Mount behind in those sort of positions. Tammy Abraham's up front. Timo Werner can come in and he can play wide as well. So there are a lot of options for Chelsea. Maybe he might be the one that thinks, okay, my chance is going to be very, very limited. I need to go out and get some football. I need to play regularly. It might be a loan deal. It might be a permanent deal. But it doesn't look like at the moment that he's going to play that often for Chelsea. I think he'll have that decision to make.
Would his style of play suit Manchester United, or should he go to Bayern Munich?
I think it's difficult. We haven't seen. He burst on the scene as a young player. I think he played for England before he played for Chelsea, didn't he? And then then he got injured. That was very, very unfortunate. And other players have maybe just overtaken him at the moment in terms of consistency and their performance levels. So I think he just needs to get out and play football. I don't think his style. He'll have to adapt. You always have to adapt as a player, especially as a wide player. I think he could play at a lot of clubs, but I think he needs to be careful, and he needs to go somewhere where he's going to play week in, week out. There's no point going to Bayern Munich, no point going to Manchester United to sit on the bench. You might as well stay at Chelsea and do that.
Will the striker for Arsenal, Aubameyang, who was the captain, lifted the cup, dropped it at the same time?
Oh, so he didn't lift it very well, did he?
Arteta has come out and said, he's almost going to sign. He might stay. But if you were him, you'd be thinking, I've done my part here. I've won a trophy with Arsenal. Perhaps Real Madrid might be my final destination before I'm too old. Or perhaps a big team in Italy.
Well, he's probably got one big contract left in him. He's got one big move. So now he's got to weigh up his options. Does he stay where he is? Is he happy there? Does he believe in the process that Mikel Arteta is putting in place and what Arsenal are trying to do? And does he take a big contract? Maybe it's £250,000 a week, whatever it might be. If Arsenal are prepared to offer him that, which I believe that they are, because how much it's going to cost Arsenal 50, 60, 70 million to replace him and replace that amount of goals. Plus somebody of that ilk is going to want, 200 grand a week anyhow. But they might have a sell-on because they'll be younger. So I think we've heard from Mikel Arteta that he wants to build the team around him. To replace him is going to be so difficult. I've said all along during this, what is now going to be a very strange transfer window, you are better off keeping hold of what you've got, because trying to replace players when we don't know what's going to happen. There's talk that there could be a second wave of coronavirus across the world, not just across Europe and the UK. Are players going to want to move for the same reason we talked about with Pulisic? Do players want to up and leave their family? Do they want to leave their homelands and the security and the safety that brings to try something new? A lot of them might just say, hang on a minute, I would prefer to sit and wait. So I think if Arsenal can sign Aubameyang up, it would be a very, very good deal for them.
But something that was screaming out loud from the screens when you watch the game, that both these two teams need some quality at the back, especially the centre-back position. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely. Oh, without a doubt. Chelsea have a lot of good young players. Zuma's in there, Christensen's in there, Rudiger, who I like. I think Rudiger, with the right partner, could be a top player. There's been talk of, Chelsea could be interested in John Stones. Not sure why. They need players that can defend, not players that can play. Oof. Arsenal similar. David Luiz on his day can be exceptional. And we've seen him, when he's been paired alongside very, very good, reliable centre-backs as a partnership, he's good. But there are still one or two doubts. But yeah, Arsenal, without a doubt, need some defenders. Chelsea needs some defenders. But there aren't that many around. If you're an agent with a top quality centre-half at the moment, you're like that. Because you can hoik him around Manchester City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham, Manchester United, Barcelona. You can almost send them anywhere in the world at the moment.
So if I were to ask you to pick one centre-back that could, sort this problem, apart from the name you mentioned, is there anybody else in the Premier League that could be that quick fix, seeing that what you just mentioned, that the money might be a problem with this whole COVID situation?
Not from the Premier League. Ben White, who played at Leeds this season, will go back to Brighton. It is potential, but that's a gamble. Upamecano is probably the only one. I know a lot of people talk about Koulibaly, but I think Koulibaly he's a great defender, but he's not really going to come out and play from the back. So if you want that, and that's what Chelsea want, that's what Arsenal want, that's what Manchester City want, does he have those qualities to come out and play from the back, to bring the ball out of defence? I'm not convinced. So Upamecano would be the only one that is around. Obviously, Nathan Ake looks like he's going to go to Manchester City. But there really aren't that many great defenders around at the moment. And that's a real problem for a lot of football clubs.
All right, Danny, thank you very much. We are out of time. Next week, we will have a review and a preview of some games in the Champions League. Thank you very much, my friend, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
And I shall talk to you very soon. All right, don't forget to, once again, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and on our other social media platforms if you have not. And if you are watching us right now on YouTube, please do turn on the notifications because we need all the support and money we can make right now. Thank you very much.